everybody, and welcome back to the Exit is Now Walking to Destiny podcast, hanging out with me, your host, Scott Snider, and my dad and the creator of the Value Acceleration methodology, Chris Snider, who's helping us debut our first several episodes of the Walking to Destiny podcast. On this podcast, we're talking about the technical methodology, the practical methodology, the application of value acceleration by sharing value acceleration methodology stories with Chris Snider, the creator, and some of our EPI thought leaders, a part of our Thought Leadership Council as well. We're on episode 2 here, where I want to go into writing of the book. The original book came out in 2016, and what I always thought was interesting is that once we bought the Exit Planning Institute, we almost immediately put the value acceleration methodology as part of the core. We let if you can recall, in 2012, we let the fall program kind of run through in the old way. Yeah. But we started the new year, January 1st, 2013, by introducing the value acceleration methodology to the industry, to the profession, and centering all of the credentialing program around, and really everything that we did, if you think about it, around any education that we were doing at the time, all around the key components of the value acceleration methodology and that framework. But it wasn't until 2016 that you finally produced the book. So talk to me about why. Why did the methodology debut first, but it took 3 years to kind of get that book out into the marketplace?
No time.
yeah, it's time. Yeah.
No, I mean, that's part of it. But
it is.
I felt like we had the SEPA programs coming up. I knew it was going to take some time to write a book.
Certainly.
Right?
Yeah.
And I wasn't sure also how people would react to the value acceleration methodology, quite honestly, right? Because I was debuting it. Worked great for me, but, how are other people, in the class,
taking it in.
And so I kind of wanted to get the methodology in there and start, change the SEPA program and the way it was being taught right away. Like that was a priority for me. And so let's just put the methodology in. We'll teach the methodology, and we'll eventually get around to writing a book about it. Because the biggest problem that I really had back when I took SEPA is it was all about the end.
Right.
It was all about, okay, I'm ready to leave. So like the gate, the exit planning started in gate 3, decide. And what I realized is like we needed to start exit planning like way back. Like it needed to be integrated. That's why we say it's present tense. It needs to be integrated in what you do every day.
Right.
So I wanted to get that out before I wrote the book, get that going as soon as I possibly could and see how people would take to it.
So you did about 2 years of that, because when did you start writing Walking to Destiny? Destiny? Was it because it came out June of 2016. I remember having the book party
the winter
and the book launch.
15, 16.
Yeah, so it was over that last quarter.
It took us 6 months to write the first book.
6 months.
But it was 6 months of really dedicated, focused effort.
Yeah, so talk about the book creation process. What was that like for you?
Yeah, so what I wanted to do was, I guess there are a couple of things that were in place, right? We bought it at the end of 12, didn't do anything with it, didn't even announce it until the end of the year after this November SEPA program. 13, if you remember, Gano was still running Exit Planning Institute. You were learning about it. I mean, think about that. That's, 13 years ago? So you're like 27?
Yeah.
And then in 14, I asked you to take the lead, and we moved it back to Cleveland. Remember, we didn't move it back to Cleveland until 14. So we're still
July
sort
14.
of letting that's the other thing I think some people don't, maybe a nugget for people. When you acquire a business, it's not like you snap a finger and it's integrated. It takes a while to integrate a business. And in fact, I recommend, there are some immediate things you do, but take your time integrating the business, and so that takes a year or two. So, you're at 13, you're at 14, now we're starting, okay, let's start thinking about the book. So it's just, just stuff takes time.
Yeah.
So, but what was missing really was the focus was all at the end, and one of our themes was we need to make exit planning present tense.
Right.
And so I wanted to get the, exit planning started in gate 1, discover, right, and integrate it as a business strategy integrated with your personal and financial goals. That was the primary goal. So going into writing the book, I wanted to really focus on getting it done. We wanted to get it done in 6 months. I mean, I remember that being and so I disappeared to Florida, if you remember. We've got the picnic bench hanging up there where I wrote quite a bit of Walking to Destiny on a picnic bench on the beach, Bowman's Beach, in Florida, and really focus on what I did. A lot of it is I took the stuff from the SEPA program, the presentations, and I used that as kind of like my basis, my outline for how to write Walking to Destiny.
Yeah, and if you think about it too, I think we teed that up with a 6-month process because we wanted to align it to our May SEPA program. In the old days of the in-person, we would have a May and a November SEPA program, and in the middle of those two, you would have the Exit Planning Summit, typically held in the old days in September. Right. And so everything was kind of guiding us towards that first SEPA program where we would debut the book there with that SEPA class, and then have the November SEPA class start reading that book as a part of the required reading of the program coming in the fall.
Yeah, so whatever SEPAs are maybe listening, that attended the May 2016 SEPA program, you were the first people to receive Walking to Destiny.
Yeah. From an operator standpoint, too, I don't know if we've even ever told you this story, to be totally honest with you, but I remember it's the first book that any of us has really created, right? Like me and you are avid readers, but we've never created a book. So we create this book, we self-publish Walking to Destiny, and we drop-shipped it directly to the SEPA program because, of course, it's crunch time.
Hot off the press.
Hot off the press. And
literally.
We knew that the real formal launch was going to be in June at your book party back home in Cleveland with some special guests and some other key folks, and that we'd actually launch it right thereafter online. But we wanted to have, to your point, that May 2016 SEPA class, we wanted those 40 people to have real copies in their hand. Yeah. And I remember being really excited, popping open the book and everything, and noticing that half the covers were stitched on wrong.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hopefully we bought some extra books. And so I remember that. But a lot of people online, if you follow me and Chris on LinkedIn or certainly the Exit Planning Institute, there's a great picture of us holding a bottle of champagne where we were looking at a first fresh copy of Walking to Destiny. That actually came after the SEPA program, where we shipped all the books for your book party. So some inside information on the Walking to Destiny build. What was the toughest part? We have, if you looked over the past year or so, obviously we have a ton of thought leaders now in the space with 11,000 certified exit planning advisors, hundreds of thousands of individual advisors that work inside of our community every year. We had a couple of companies at the Exit Planning Summit that help people build books and become authors. So certainly a ton of thought leaders in the space. We didn't have that for us back then in 2016. What was some of the toughest moments for you in that writing process?
Well, it's a grueling, the way I did it, as I went down to Florida, and I just went through about a month of just head down. It's the only thing I did every day for like 3 weeks. Yeah. I'd get up at 6 a.m. when I'm fresh, and I would write immediately, while I was having my first cup of coffee. I'd write for as long as I could. Usually I found that, probably different authors have different experiences, but for me, I could write for about 2, maybe 3 hours, kind of like a workshop, right?
Yep, right.
And then I'd kind of get a little brain dead, and then I would go out and I'd go for a walk on the beach, and clear my head and think about, okay, where am I? What do I got to do next? Come back. I'd write a little bit more, and then I would take another break, maybe another couple hours, and I'd take another break. And I would have some lunch and gather all my stuff up. And then I would leave my condo and go to that picnic bench.
Yep.
And I would start off with a walk on the beach, and clear my head and think about what I wanted to accomplish each day. So I really kind of took it almost like in half days. Yeah, so what am I going to do in the morning? I'm going to have 2 writing sessions in the morning. I'm going to have 2 writing sessions in the afternoon. Usually, I would break like about 3 or 3:30, maybe 4, and then I'd go do something like, go to the park or go bird watching or, do something to get my mind off it, come back, have some dinner. And then it was kind of cool because, I love the beach.
Yep, of course.
So I would catch every sunset, and after dinner, I'd go out and walk the beach and just think about what did I accomplish today? What am I going to accomplish tomorrow? What are some of the ideas maybe that I need to articulate? And I would do that while I was walking the beach and watching the sunset. And then I would come in from there, make my notes for, whatever ideas, because I'm always getting like great idea. I get my best ideas on the beach.
Yeah.
And I'd write those ideas all down, and then that would become, like when I would get up at 6 the next morning, I'd already have my notes, like what I want to focus on first.
Yep. Sure.
And just repeat, that process for 3 or 4 weeks straight, 7 days a week. That's, that's pretty much all I was doing. I might check emails like at 3 or 4 when I get back.
Yeah.
Scan emails, but that was one of the nice things is that you had been with the business, had taken the business in 14, kind of taken over operations.
Yeah.
Now we're at 15. You've been a year or two into that. I felt comfortable going away.
Yeah.
And I was already starting to decentralize myself from the business, if you think about it, to be able to have the opportunity to just check out like that for 3 or 4 weeks. But then, you come back and you've got a full book written, but what a lot of people don't realize when you write a book, you actually write it 3 times or more. Mm. So the first time is just a brain dump. You're just writing and writing and writing and writing, right? You're not thinking about format or, editing or, cutting back words, or you're just writing whatever comes to mind. When you get back on the second version, you've really got to try to, start to edit it and get the, my being clear with what I want to say here. So you start kind of wordsmithing and, sentence structure and start, that kind of stuff. Now, the other thing I did is I had a peer review on that first book. And what was interesting is my friends, my colleagues came back and they said, this is a really good technical book, but we don't hear your voice in it. This doesn't sound like you. Your personality isn't in this book. And so I went back, and that's when I started adding all the stories in the book.
Right.
Because I needed to add some color and add some stories and express my personality in the book, not just the technical side. And so after the second time, that's kind of where I was. And then after the second time, now you're ready to submit it to an editor, somebody professionally trained.
Right.
And then they rip it to shit. I mean, excuse my friend. They rip it to shreds.
Yeah.
And tear it all up. You think you have a really good book, and then they just rip it apart.
That's probably a pretty tough.
It's tough
pill to swallow.
But they have. But if you're being objective and honest, you're saying, yeah, I guess you're right on that.
Yeah.
So they help you really start to fine tune it, and you go through about 2. Sometimes, in the second book was even harder. You go through at least a couple iterations of that. So by the time you're done, you've kind of written this thing like 4 times. It's a big project.
So have you thought about a title yet when you were in that process, right? Like, where's the title start to come about?
Yeah, this is where I kind of diverged from a lot of the advice I was getting, because people saying, you got to have the title first. And I'm like, no, the title's going to come to me.
Yeah, I would agree. I would tend to agree with that. I wouldn't think that it would come first.
I got to get the words down, and then when I read the words, I think the title will come out. And do you want to know where the title came from? So it's actually, the title came from a gospel song. So you know me, I like to.
Yep.
I was a big runner in my younger days, and Sunday mornings I would run and listen to gospel music. That was kind of like my way to connect.
Yeah.
And I was getting to the book was like written, and people were like, "We need a title. We need a title," And I said, "It just hasn't come to me. It just hasn't come to me." And I was out running one Sunday morning, listening to my music, and the song "Walking in My Destiny" played. Beautiful song. And I'm running, and I'm thinking, that's it.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to accomplish, right?
It hit me. I'm trying to show people how to walk towards their destiny, And I said, that's it. That's the name of the book. That's where it came from.
And so what also helped you then, the tagline, right, the subtitle of the book is The 11 Actions. So how did you start to put together those 11 actions? Did that come first and you wrote with those in mind?
Yeah, that did come. So Tom Deans, as many people may know, Dr. Tom Deans was my book coach. And one of the things he said to me early on is, you got to have like a list of actions, whether it's 8 steps or 3 steps or whatever it is. Now, 11's my lucky number. I said, well, I'm going to come up with 11 actions. Okay. That's my lucky number.
Cool.
And the other thing that happened is after I came back, and the book was all kind of gibberish, a lot of unstructured context. And as I sat down, I was trying to think, like, what Tom was saying is, what are you really trying to say here? Like, you got to come up with some like core things. What are you trying to say?
Yeah.
So the 11 actions really came from, I don't think we spent enough time actually on those 11 actions, because where it came from is I felt like what we really need to do is we need a paradigm shift in the way people view exit planning, right? We can come up with the process all we want, but we have to shift their thinking, shift their viewpoint, shift their paradigm. And in order to shift the paradigm, what are the core things that they really need to focus on in order to complete that shift? Because once you make that shift, and I think a lot of us as CEPAs have maybe experienced this with our clients, like once our clients get educated and they see what we're trying to do, it's all, at least the reaction I mostly get from owners is like, God, I can't believe this hasn't been on my radar. It's just like, what the heck?
Yeah, this massive aha
Like, this is so obvious that I should be doing this, but nobody's just put it in front of me before. And so that's what I was challenged. So I did come up with the 11 actions before I came up with the title, because I felt like the core thing I'm trying to do is really shift the way people think.
Did you have those action items before you put, pen to paper when you're sitting in the beach or sitting?
I didn't.
You didn't have those. Those came to you from getting everything out, and that
getting everything out
came to 11 actions.
What happens?
Summarized.
You get everything out, and you have this wild mess of knowledge. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you have to start thinking about structuring it. Like, what should I say first? Should this be at the beginning or should this be at the end? And so the challenge after the first write-up, which I think that's the right way to do it, at least that's the way I did it both times, is now you got to start thinking about structure. And so the challenge to me was, what are the core things you're trying to get out? Because once we know those, we can begin to structure the book around those.
Interesting, yeah. So if you had advice, now you've been through it twice, if you had advice for our CEPAs or really any thought leader listening into the podcast of they have a passion to write a book, what would be some advice? Would it be kind of have a process and approach like you do for value acceleration? Because it sounds like one of the things that I'm getting out of having you talk through the book a little bit was you did have a pretty methodical way you went about it. Like you went away, you had 2 sessions in the morning, 2 sessions. Yeah, so is that a you thing or is that something that you would find helpful for really
I would recommend it. I mean, it worked for me, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for everybody else. And we have a lot of authors now in our group, in our community, so maybe an interesting thing for the summit, like a panel to talk about, different authors and their approaches to writing.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a lot of people that would like to write a book, but it's such a daunting task. They don't know where to begin So I do think you have to have some people say you get the title first. Some people say you have the outline first. There's just different ways to do it. The second time around, I had an actual true book coach, and he was like super, super helpful.
So coach would be one thing.
I would definitely get a coach because I'd write a chapter, send it to him, and he'd come back and say, "Well, nah, this isn't working. You gotta start. You gotta do this. They're gonna fall asleep reading that." Like, it was really helpful to have a coach. The second thing I would say is you got to find. Well, I'd even say before that, it has to be something, you mentioned it when you introduced this topic, passion.
Yeah.
The beauty of my career is I've always, and especially after I bought EPI, I found my passion. I love to teach.
Right.
And even when I was in corporate America and I had, my staff, I always felt my role was to teach them. My job is to teach them to be better at what they do, because if they're better at what they do, that's going to be good for me too. As I took on the role, you remember I was doing a lot of change efforts too. So I was always teaching. Yeah. Even in audit, I was teaching, when I was 22 years old. And so I think you got to find, I love to teach. And so I think I love seeing people learn something, apply it, and become better. And so I think you got to find your passion, right? Then you got to find a coach. Mm-hmm. And then you got to be, if you're passionate about it, you're willing to spend the time. You also have to have a lot of support, whether it's support from the people like you and the team that allowed me to go off and disappear for 4 weeks. My wife,
Sure.
who allowed me to leave for 3 or 4 weeks and go to Florida by myself. I like the idea of going off by yourself, and I recommend this to business owners and my clients too. Go off by yourself. Go rent a home and I used to do this even before I was writing a book. Times, I don't know if you remember when you were a kid, but I would disappear for a weekend. I'd do like a little retreat. Sure. And I would go to Florida, and I would just rent a place, and I would just almost kind of like a retreat, where I would, go off by myself to gather my thoughts and think about what I was trying to do and where I was in life and, what I wanted to do in business or, and I just find going off by yourself with nobody around,
Yeah.
Because there's all this noise around us and you can't get your thoughts together. So just go, if you just take a few days and go away somewhere where you're happy, find your happy place, whether it's the mountains or the beach or wherever, and just let it come to you. Just you go for a walk without an agenda and see what pops into your head. And I just find like you connect with yourself and what's important to you and who's important to you when you're by yourself off alone like that. So I think that's a great way to write a book.
So, now you have the book, and the book is out, and it's been out obviously since 2016, second edition in 2023.
Yeah.
How do you hope that people are using the book? And the book is written for the business owner, but it's really utilized by both audiences, right? It's certainly used as a business owner, like a catalyst, hopefully, for change.
Yeah.
But it's also used as like a handbook, a playbook. Yeah. For the professional advisor. So maybe you could talk about it depending on who our listener is, if it's the advisor or the owner. Yeah. What are you hoping people use the book for? A little bit different than what they perhaps get out of it. Like, how can I use this thing?
Yeah, so the best situation are not clean copies like that. The best experiences I've had is when I go into a city and an owner comes up and the pages are all folded over and there's stickies in there and notes and the book looks like it's been ripped to shreds, you could tell it's been used and the pages have been turned multiple times. It's like a reference manual is the best way to think about it, right? Sure. There's so much in there. Remember, it's built on 40 years of experience and dozens and dozens of very difficult projects, right? And so you're not going to get it. It took me 40 years to write this book, right? Or maybe 35, whatever it was. You're not going to get it in 35 hours or even 35 days. You got to spend time with it. You got to revisit it. When you run into a situation, go back to that section and open it up and read it again. How could I have handled that situation maybe a little differently? Go to the reflection questions. Oh, I didn't ask these questions. I should have asked these questions. It's something to be revisited frequently, and keep it there and revisit. It's kind of like 7 Habits of Highly Successful People for me.
Yeah.
That was my guidebook.
Okay.
A friend of mine gave me that book in 1993, and she said, you need to read this. You're completely out of balance, And for the rest of my life, I've read that book. I have multiple versions of it, and pages are all. So that's how it's intended, I think, is a reference manual. It's something you have to go back and revisit each time you have a different experience. And if you do that, then you'll get better and better. You'll start to internalize the messages.
Yeah.
It's easy for me because I've done it all my life. But for new people reading it, you have to let it. It's a seed. It needs to resonate. It needs to germinate.
Yeah.
And you have to tend to that seed if you want it to really grow. So that's how the best way to really use the book.
I like that quite a bit, actually, and I like the revisiting it for the certified exit planning advisors. We get that a lot when you're seeing people at the summit or at a chapter meeting, or we're having Zoom calls or phone calls with them. You find them revisiting, and to your point, not necessarily revisiting the whole thing, although certainly some do, but they have an experience.
Yeah.
And then they go back into that book and reread that. I mean, that I like it as a reference guide.
Mike Traver, who's a friend of
Sure.
mine, and Mike and I have been working together probably since, before even walking to Destiny.
Yeah,
and he came up to me at this year's summit, and he said to me, Chris, I still look at that book. And every time I pick it up, or I watch you on a podcast, or I watch, because he came to the Mastering the Triggering event.
Yeah.
He said, every time I hear you talk about this, I still pick up new things that I hadn't picked up before, and they was right there in front of me. I didn't pick it up.
Yeah.
So that's really, I think, the way to use the book. It's a lifelong or career-long tool that you keep with you at all times.
Very cool, and I think that's great advice for both owner and advisor, is that every time you have, again, this reference tool, every time you have an experience, pull it off the shelf and go back and reference that specific chapter or even that specific topic within that chapter. I think that's a great way to talk about it.
The other thing I'd recommend is, we have the audio version as well.
Sure.
Right? And there's times I'll be driving down to my lake house and I'm listening.
Or in an RV trip with me. Yeah, you were just listening to it the other day.
You didn't know that?
Yeah,
I didn't know if you knew that or not.
Yeah,
but I was actually listening to it in the motorhome.
Yep, of course.
Because we had a bit of a drive, and so I still listen to, so you can listen to it and then you go back to that page, and you can reference. I think actually you wrote that as a recommendation in the book.
Yeah.
So, and maybe another question you asked if we had time. One of the challenges I had is I needed a technical book for advisors.
Yep.
Who tend to be left-brain technical process, right? Yep. But I wanted to write it as if I was talking to the business owner, my client.
Right.
I wanted the advisors to hear how I talk to my clients.
Sure.
So the book is written for business owners by a business owner, because my mentality was I'm talking to my peers, the business owner.
Sure.
And what was challenging, because even the editors and the coach were saying, well, who are you writing this book for? I think you even challenged me, like, is this book for advisors, this book for owners? I'm like, yes. That's the challenge. They're like, well, it's got to be one or the other. I'm like, no, it can't be. Because I want the advisors, the CEPAs, to hear how I talk to business owners. So I have to write as if I'm talking to the business owner and then use it as a tool to teach the advisors how to talk to the business owners, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
But still make it interesting enough that a business owner would pick it up and read it. So what I find, the different chapters are directed to different people. So like the section 2, where we're talking about the concepts, which is the principles and leadership principles, which is the right brain stuff. That's really intended for the business owners, right? Because they're conceptual, they're high level. The chapter or section 3, which is part 3, which is the technical side of how to actually do value acceleration, is really written for the advisors.
Yeah. So, maybe last question in this episode for you too is what I always call the so what and what now moment. So I read the book. What do you want me to go do? What's my next step? Well, again, maybe you could say in two forms, right? If I'm an advisor that reads it, if I'm a business owner that read it, I'm motivated, but what do I do next if you had a piece of advice?
What should I use the word?
whichever.
Activate.
Activate, right? You need
That's
to go
the key word,
yourself.
everybody. Activation.
It is.
That's our new theme.
It is.
Right? You got to read it, and then you got to go do something with it. So what I recommend you do again is you have to spend some time really thinking through how am I going to integrate what I learned here into what I do. That's what makes it so challenging, because I might be a financial advisor, I might be a value advisor, right. I might be an M&A person. And so you have to think about, how am I going to integrate that into my practice, right? How do I change my language? I can't tell you how much time I spent on that, how much time I spent in the mirror talking value acceleration as if there was an owner on the other side and I was speaking, practicing. I did times where I recorded myself, talking and then listening to the recording, Mm-hmm. You have to spend time with it, and you have to think about how you're actually going to integrate it. And I know CEPAs probably get tired of me, probably all get tired of me saying this too, because I say it to the owners and I say it to advisors, and I get this a lot of questions from the media too. What's the one thing a business owner should do? Triggering event. You got to do a triggering event.
Yeah.
It creates such an aha moment. And I think sometimes what happens with the CEPAs is they're like, well, I don't do triggering events.
Sure.
So they're uncomfortable talking to the owner about why it's important to start with a triggering event. All CEPAs have to do triggering events. And that doesn't mean that you're necessarily the person who physically does it.
Right.
But all of your engagements, I don't care if you're a financial advisor, a personal planner, CEPA, you should start with that triggering event, because that triggers the action that we're all
100%.
trying to get at. And so same thing, if you're I say to business owners, what should I do? I'm like, yeah, you can read books, you can do some of these other things, you can join a peer group, just do a triggering event. You'll be so blown away at the information that you'll be going, I can't believe I haven't done this before. This is awesome. And that will motivate you to go to the next step. Make that phone call to a financial advisor. Make that phone call to an M&A specialist. Make that phone call to a consultant or your CPA. I never forget Traber coming in one day, and there was a client that we both know, an owner that he takes care of, and he was in visiting him, and the owner walked in with a copy of Walking to Destiny and waved it in front of Mike and said, have you read this book? And Mike laughed. He's like, well, yeah,
I'm trained
of course, I'm trained in it.
Yeah.
And but the owner didn't know that.
Right.
I'm trained in it, and I'm friends with the guy that wrote it. And he says, "There's a lot of good stuff in here. Can you help me implement this?" He's like, "Absolutely."
Yeah, exactly right.
Mm-hmm. So you've got to be ready for that. You got to do triggering event to get going.
Cool. So I would totally agree with you that it's really about activation. So in my opinion, whether it's the advisor or the owner, I think one of the big so what and what now moments is a clarity moment. It's let's get to a triggering event. Why? Because I'm going to gain so much clarity in how to optimize my business, how much my business is worth now, what it could be worth, and also personal financial clarity as well. And I think both for advisors and owners, certainly we all want to move towards action. We want to change our outcome. We want to build more significant companies. And so you're likely to change that outcome if you can have that clarity moment. So I think whether I'm coaching an advisor to say, I read this book, what should I go do? My next step would be, start talking to your business owner, let them explore value acceleration and lead them to triggering event. If you're a business owner picking up the book, get with an advisor that can do triggering event. At bare minimum, if you're the business owner, you gain so much clarity into what's going on in your business and life right now. And I don't know who wouldn't want that. To your point, take the exit out of it. You will gain more clarity in your life and business today by just doing that. So the so what and what now moment I think is spot on. We got to get to triggering event.
You remember what our board said when we had our board meeting last year, and the board said to me, "Have you done a triggering event?"
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So even I do trigger events,
exactly
right? We do trigger. We've done a trigger event for ourselves
every year.
and it does bring, even from the person that wrote it, I still get clarity. We got get a ton of clarity out of doing the trigger event.
It's the slowdown for those of you that have kind of lived in value acceleration for a while, like we have. I mean, it's the slow down to speed up kind of moment, right? It's a good thing to do every single year because it's just like your health check, right? Like if you get a health check on your body, you should get a health check on your biggest asset, which is your business.
Yeah, there's things out there that you're not doing that once you realize, like you're like, I can't believe we missed this. But what happens is there's just so much noise. It's so complex running a business. Yeah, you're always going.
Even the more decentralized owners,
totally.
You're still always going.
Totally.
But that slow down to speed up moment. So, Chris, thanks for spending another episode on the Walking to Destiny podcast with us. We are going to be back on August 12th. As we go into August 12th, our podcast gets a bit deeper. If you have Walking to Destiny, I'd pick up your copy. If you have not gotten Walking to Destiny, just navigate to the Exit Planning Institute website and grab a copy of Walking to Destiny. We're going to start dissecting the book. So the first couple of episodes, if you've been following, have kind of led up to the book. We talked about Chris as a value creator in his career. We've talked about the author process in writing the book, why the book is here, how it should be used. Now let's talk about the book itself. So we will be back on August 12th. We're going to jump into part 1 of Walking to Destiny, which is really understanding the business owner, which I think is a key step. We can't possibly get into concepts. We can't possibly get into the process until we could really understand, and you alluded to it as we started our episode here today. We have to understand how our mindset needs to shift, and we have to understand the current business owner mindset and where we have to go. So again, please listen and share this podcast with your friends, your colleagues, your business owners. We will be back on August 12th. Can't wait to see you then. Thanks. Thanks, Chris.